This is Dr. Carroll, and I'm going to step through some assert exercises in this video. So the first exercise is write a simple assert statement with just a test expression. So we could have something like assert counter not equal to 0. Okay, because assert is going to assert that this is true. And so we're saying, hey, this had better not be, or we could say it is 0. We're saying the counter had better be 0 at this point. And if not, then we have a problem and we need to stop execution. So then write one with an error message. So we could have the exact same assert message. Hey, we're expecting, I'm assuming is how you could read this, that the counter is going to be 0. And if not, you do a colon here and you're saying counter is not 0. And then that's good to know, but the first thing I would want to know if I saw this was, what is the value of the counter? So we could put in our string and we could even concatenate it so that it was more readable to say, hey, counter is not 0, and by the way, here's the value of counter. So that somebody seeing this message will say, oh, it's, it's -1 or it's 1, and we can figure out what is going on in the code. So those are two simple examples. Now let's see, number 3 here, replace the add assert statement here with appropriate assert statement. So I've already copied this code over so that we can execute it. So here we have this as assert example. I've just put it into a very simple class so we could execute it. And so we have a constant here, we have another constant, we have a loop variable, and then a counter. We have 2 while loops, and we're just incrementing the counter. And then there's this note here, hey, we should never reach this line. Well, instead of writing that note, let's put in an assumption. And because the assumption is that we should never reach it, then there's nothing really to test. So we're assuming that false is true, which is not true. So then it throws an error message. So you could write assert false here saying, hey, we have a problem. But then let's put in an error message so that we know it, we can understand more of what's going on. So to do that, we need the colon, and then we have a string. And so let's just use this line, should never reach this line. And now that's good, but let's take it one step further and let's say, hey, what is the counter's value? Because that's going to play a key role into figuring out why we reached this line that we thought we never would. So we could say, hey, what is the counter? And then let's clean that up, and we can just take this out too. So now let's compile it and see what happens. Java C, this was assert example Java. Oh, yep, we need a semicolon. Oops, forgot that. Thank you, compiler. All right, yay, it compiles, and now we can run it. But we need to enable assertions, EA, enable insertions to run it. And it's good. Good, okay, so that's true. We should never reach that line, we didn't. But let's say the code was 100, and by our calculations, that should never reach that, and so we need to recompile it because we changed it. And now let's run it again, and sure enough it says, hey, an exception in thread main, an assertion error shouldn't, and it has our string here, should never reach this line, and the counter is exactly 100. Oh, so we're just off a little bit on that, and it tells you where it was. It was in assert example.java in the main method, and that's on line 19. Now just for completeness, notice if we don't enable assertions when we're executing it, then it actually threw that assertion, but it didn't do anything. Okay, we've got one more exercise here. Oh, so for completeness, let's copy and paste that line in here. I'll change it later to not be blue as a comment. Okay, last one here. Add appropriate assert statements for each of the assumptions in the following helper method. Helper method, oh yes, it's a private method because you shouldn't use assert statements to enforce assumptions for public methods because you never know who called them and what's going to happen for that. But a private method, we know who's going to call that. It's going to be somebody in the same class. Okay, so we control everything and it should be behaving properly. And so we're going to say process this survey here. Here we have a Java doc. We have participant's last name and then an age. And then it's going to return true if it's successful and false otherwise. Okay, so this is just the first part. There's a lot more to this. Okay, so it's assumed that the name is at least 2 characters. So assumed, that sounds like an assert to me. And so we say assert, and then what are we asserting? We're asserting that name.length here is less than, that it is at least 2 characters. So that is at least 2 characters here. And then we could say name should be at least 2 characters long. And then let's put in there, what is the name? And we would have to get out these fancy quotes. But, oh, and semicolon, don't forget the semicolon. Great. So that would verify our assumption for name. And so then it will run and it'll catch it anytime that we violated that, and send assert. Since it's a survey, participants need to be 18 years and older, so we're asserting that the age is the variable is greater than or equal to 18, and then we could have a comment here. And then let's put in, well, what was the age? Is it 17? Is it 180 and somehow that was wrong or something? You know, what got us to this? What violated our assumption? And then we could write the whole rest of the method there. Well, that's it for assert exercises. I hope you enjoyed it.